Chapter 8 Nero Nero Island. Kira Yoshikage's murders. The display of 3 dead detectives, one of them being Tsukumojiku. Morioh suddenly setting sail. The group suicide of village residents. The mysterious figure hiding inside the cube house. And now, on top of all that, another mysterious moving island sailing across the sea, just like Morioh. There were just too many things I had to think about, I thought. It had been one thing after another, and I'd had no time to really work any of them over in my mind. Oh well, I had to assume this was the speed that events always unfolded at in Morioh. I had to keep up.
Fuck, I've got no damn idea what's going on. Let's go take a look,
Nijimura Fukashiki said, and started to get on a dolphin. Hang on, Fukashiki, I said. There might be people like you on that island too. Better not to show our hands. Morioh seemed to have quite a lot of stand masters. If that unusual quality had something to do with its floating away, then that could be true over there too. If there were 2 islands moving across the water, they may be similarly unique. How many other stand masters were there in Morioh anyway? How many stand masters had been among the hundreds who died in Jozenji? Fukashiki grit his teeth and got off the dolphin. The other island was getting steadily closer.
Well, maybe these will help us recon,
Morioh Taisu said, emerging from Arrowcross with a telescope and a pair of binoculars, presumably Rohan's. Oh, I said, impressed. I was kicking myself inside, though. Morioh Taisu, better not go inside Arrowcross for a bit. Earlier I found Cube House hidden inside it, and there was something inside Cube House. Someone suspicious.
What?
Morioh Taisu looked at the new island and then back at the cube house, as if not sure which he should tackle first. I've locked cube house up and made sure we'll know if anyone goes in or out, I said.
I don't know, man. Cube house is hidden inside Arrowcross? Well, how did you find it?
There's doors directly above and below the desk in the study.
Got it,
he said, and went back inside. He came out a few minutes later and explained.
I set up a hidden video camera.
I was sure the camera was Rohan's too, and the idea of him just doing whatever he wanted with Rohan's things made me want to laugh, but there was too much going on for that.
Whoa, that ain't Japan, it's some foreign island,
Fukashiki yelled. I took the binoculars off of him and took a look. He was right. The view was nothing you'd see in Japan. There were only a few buildings in sight, but they were mostly made of brick, and there were several windmills. Not sights you saw a lot in Japanese country towns. The crops waving in the wind looked like wheat. I looked down at the water's edge. There were several ships with Italian names. I found a sign by the road leading from the docks to the town. It said, "Welcome to Nero Nero Island," in Italian.
Nero Nero Island, it says.
Morioh Taisu went back inside Arrowcross and came back out with Rohan's encyclopedia. Nero Nero Island was about 1/10 the size of Morioh, population roughly 3,000. I knew a bit more that wasn't written in the encyclopedia. Nero is Italian for black. Nero Nero Island has a long history as a mafia base. I'd had to do a lot of research about international organized crime for a previous case. These days, Nero Nero Island is the headquarters of the Pascione family. They've got about 300 members. Territory reaching from Rome to Napoli, and Naples in English. They're competing with the Sicilian Mafia and the Camorra, so how a group this small survives, well, I didn't know before, but since Nero Nero is on the move, I bet there's a good chance they've got a lot of stand masters in their ranks. They're already fairly unique in that there aren't any records of the boss's face, and he's so secretive that not even their inner circle has ever met the boss. The only name anyone even has for him is Diavolo, Italian for devil. Hey! What's that? Just like Morioh, the Nero Nero Island harbour and a part of the ocean around were inside a giant bubble. I'd just found a truck racing down the road to the harbour.
Looks like they're in trouble,
Morioh Taisu said, looking through the telescope.
I can see people in back waving at us.
What? I looked, but the magnification on the binoculars wasn't strong enough. I squinted, trying to see, and the little truck suddenly went up in flames and rolled.
Whoa!
We yelled. Figures emerged on either side of the burning truck, approached the people lying on the ground, and light flashed at their hands. Pop,
Shit! Shit! Fuck! They're killing everyone on the truck! Jesus, they ambushed the truck! God damn it, I gotta go help!
Morioh Taisu tossed the telescope aside and flew off into the sky with his 3 dolphins. All I could do was watch. There was a barrier around Morioh, and nothing inside or out could get through it. The self-defense force had rammed a jet fighter into it and shot missiles at it and couldn't break through the wall, but if Morioh Taisu somehow got through, that would definitely change things.
Shit! There's still one left alive!
I could see someone running through the grass towards us. He must have slipped away while the gunmen were attacking the truck. He was waving desperately in the direction of Morioh, begging us to help. Light flashed behind him. Pop, 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 pop. Like he was knocked aside by an invisible hand, the man running towards us went sprawling on the ground.
Can't you do anything, dipshit?
Fukashiki yelled. NYPD Blue had picked up the telescope and was looking through it. He bellowed back.
What the fuck do you want me to do? Shoot back?
He pulled his gun out of his side holster. It was huge and very real. He put it away immediately.
This bad boy is a Colt Python. It's loaded with .357 Magnums. It's from the first production run they ever did. It's damn close to being a work of art. This fucker hits you, it'll blow the back of your head clean off. If it hits you. Even the best gun has an effective range, kid. Bullets don't fly forever. They slow down, their arc changes, then they turn into a bit of lead and land somewhere. That's how bullets work. Even if I had a fucking sniper rifle, I couldn't hit him at this range. And even if I could, there's a barrier between us. Probably 2. So you can't fucking do anything! I am doing something! I'm recording evidence! I'm gonna arrest all of these motherfuckers! Fuck that! We have to help these people! No can do, asshole! Oh, looks like one of the murder squad is Pashone's Dolce Chocolata.
4 pieces of paper shot out of NYPD Blue's side, from the gap of his shirt. I picked them up. They were copies of the file that Interpol, the Italian police, the CIA, and the FBI had on him. Not only had he sold drugs in America, he'd even been involved in terrorist activity. I'm broadcasting video footage live to all 4 organizations. Oh, Secco Rotario's there too. Pashone members running around their base killing ordinary citizens. Either they're trying to kill the boss and cutting off his escape, or they already did it and are cleaning up. 3 men who looked like farmers made it to the harbor, jumped in a boat and headed towards us. Morioh Taisu was in Morioh harbor trying to reach them, but was stuck helplessly behind the barrier. He'd begun throwing his shoulder against it, trying to break through, but the invisible wall refused to budge. Over on Nero Nero Island, the farmer's boat crashed into another invisible wall. The prow rammed headlong into it, the boat tilted sideways, and the farmers were flung out of their seats. One landed on the boat, but the other 2 went in the water. There was a good 200 meters between the 2 barriers. Morioh Taisu and his dolphins kept up their assault, but could not break through the wall. 200 meters away, boats came after the escapees. Light flashed. Pop, 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 pop.
Ah, shit!
Fukashiki yelled. I couldn't watch, and turned my eyes away and saw more paper lying on the ground. I picked it up and read it. One sheet was Secco Rotario's hospital records. It didn't name any kind of psychological or physical condition. The only thing written on it was the name of his doctor. Dolce Chocolata. He was a doctor. I looked back up, and the slaughter had ended. The 3 in the boat weren't the only ones who'd reached the water. There were other bodies lying on the docks. The mafia members moved them out of sight, dropping the bodies in the water between the boats, or tossing them into the tall grass by the side of the road to the harbour. Most likely they only bothered so it would be easier to kill anyone else who came running, if there was anyone left alive.
Hey, they can't see our island, right?
Fukashiki said, his lips quivering.
How can they just kill people in plain sight?
I didn't answer. But there was only one answer, because it wouldn't cause any problems, or because they knew they could stop it from being a problem. The Mafia got rid of problems in 3 main ways: bribes, threats, and murdering witnesses. There was no way they'd try and buy or threaten however many people were in Morioh, but would they really try and kill everyone here? No matter how many of them there were, could they really manage that? I remembered the message Hirose Koji had received from the former American president. He said if nothing changes, the American army will flip the island. That was delivered shortly after Morioh changed course. The sudden swerve west had put Funny Valentine in danger, so he had clearly noticed it. By nothing changes, he meant if we kept heading west, so we were still headed in the dangerous direction he'd warned us about. Was it possible the Mafia was aware of the American army's intentions? According to the records NYPD Blue's stomach had printed out, Passione had already started operating in America, and there were no lines of business the Mafia couldn't find a way to profit on, so they must have been making political and military contacts. Perhaps these had informed them, but Nero Nero Island was running alongside Morioh. It too was travelling in the same dangerous direction. Perhaps Nero Nero had received the same threat from America, and they'd taken advantage of the panic to start infighting. Were they certain their powers would allow them to survive what was coming? Whatever was going through the Passione members' minds, the threat to Morioh was still very real. Barrier Chomaru had suggested we would have to police ourselves, but that had mostly been an appeal to Kira Yoshikage's state of mind, so in my opinion, we would need to be prepared for further attacks from the outside. As I reached this conclusion, Morioh Taisu came riding back to us on his dolphin. He looked exhausted, physically and mentally.
"Fuck those guys!"
he said, shaking with rage. I wasn't sure what a high school delinquent could do against the Mafia, but he was in no mood to have this pointed out. Whatever it was he could do, we all had to work together now. "Morioh Taisu, you have any idea how many Standmasters there are in Morioh?" He thought for a minute, and then shook his head.
"Well, could I?
How many do you know about?"
Well, I can't just tell you that. Oh, come on, this isn't the time for that,
I said, and trailed off, gaping. It was starting.
Shit! 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 Here it comes!
Fukashigi shrieked. Morioh Taisu turned to look. Nero Nero Island had been running off Morioh's starboard side, but it had suddenly veered portwise towards us, the head of the island approaching diagonally. We were headed straight west, so Nero Nero Island's head came ramming into Morioh's south side, into Morioh Harbour, right before our eyes.
"Oh shit!"
I yelled, thinking furiously. The barrier had stood up to a jet fighter and a missile attack, but could it stop another barrier? Another island? Morioh's barrier was larger, but when two ships crashed into each other, size was less important than the angle. Morioh was unable to avoid the attack. There was a dull roar, and Morioh lurched sideways as the other island slammed into it.
"Fuck!"
we yelped, crouching down in the grass. We put our hands on the ground to steady ourselves, but to no avail. There was a zoomp as Morioh recovered that sent me and the Nijimura brothers rolling head over heels towards the harbour. When we managed to stop ourselves and look up, we saw Nero Nero Island slowly rising out of the water. It had not stopped moving forward on impact. Instead, the two barriers slid against each other, forcing the smaller island upwards. Soon we could see what was propelling the island forward. Nero Nero Island had not just been floating, it had been swimming. As the underside of Nero Nero Island came into view, two massive legs appeared, skittering against the side of the barrier.
I'm not too good with insects,
Fukashigi said. There was an ear-splitting rumble, the ground shook, and then there was a thundering crack, as if lightning was hitting the entire sky at once, and we all clapped our hands to our ears as Nero Nero Island came crashing through the barrier dome and landed in Morioh Harbour. The weight of the other island had broken through the barrier. The barrier's soundproofing was gone too. The massive island hit the sea with a horrible thump. A white wall of waves rose up, rocking the still waters of the harbour, doing terrible things to the boats and the coastal part of town. While the wreckage was still being tossed around in the churn, Nero Nero Island moved forward, the two legs reaching up. 2 more massive, muscular legs reached out from the sides of the island, hooked their claws onto the sides of the hole in the barrier, and began squeezing the rest of its body, the island, through the gap. We no longer remembered to scream. The sound of the waves in Morioh Harbour echoed off the interior of the dome, the thuds slamming into our bodies. It was painful, like our ears were ripping open, like someone was driving a nail into our heads, but we didn't dare close our eyes. Nero Nero Island had twisted its massive body into the sky above Morioh Harbour, and was now standing on 6 legs. It was neither island nor ship, but an insect. My legs were shaking, and my entire body felt numb. I couldn't move a muscle. Morioh Taisu and Fukashiki were both standing perfectly still, mouths open, all colour drained from their faces. Only their stands were moving. Grand Blue's 3 dolphins slid up next to Morioh Taisu and started shoving into him, chirping. He snapped out of his trance just as... bang! An explosion rang out over the sound of the waves. I jumped and spun around and found NYPD Blue aiming his Colt Python at Nero Nero Island, smoke curling from the barrel.
Huh!
NYPD Blue grunted.
Well, I know perfectly well that didn't reach him. Okay, that was a wake-up call, you little fucks. We got no time to stand around gawking. Wake the fuck up, you punk motherfuckers. What now? If I was in charge here, I'd say we retreat and regroup.
And I had no objections to that plan. The Nijimuras and I stood up, dashed past Arrowcross House to the other side of the hill, and were about to jump on Morioh Taisu's dolphins when I remembered something. Someone. Sugimoto Reimi. I let go of Johanna's fin, dropped back to the slope, used the momentum to swing myself into a U-turn, and dashed back up the hill.
Hey, where are you going?
I heard Fukashiki call after me as his dolphin carried him away.
Reimi!
I yelled. Just as I reached the white pebbles around Arrowcross, a voice behind me said,
Thank you, George. I'll go. You run.
Grateful for these words, I turned around and found Rohan flying behind me, blue thunder on his head. He passed me by.
Let me take care of Sugimoto.
But I didn't leave. No detective would leave until he was sure everyone was safe. And I had also remembered the figure inside the cube house. I couldn't run until I figured out who that was. Scroosh, 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 scroosh. Gravel flew in my wake, and I caught a glimpse of Nero Nero Island making landfall in Morioh Harbour through the sunroom window. The waves had already demolished the town, and now the island's giant legs were crushing the rubble. The ground in town couldn't handle the weight of the island, and with each step the insect took, its feet sank into the ground, and the hollows filled with maybe seawater or groundwater. Either way, the sea extended itself via these indentations, caused by the insect's footsteps. I almost stopped to gawk at it again, but I forced myself not to. I headed for the west sunroom where Morioh Taisu had carried Sugimoto. Rohan and Reimi were there. They were watching Nero Nero Island trample Morioh Harbour, terrified. When I saw that Sugimoto had her arms around Rohan, I hesitated, but there was no time to spare.
Rohan! Reimi! Can you get out of there?
I called out through the window. Sugimoto jumped, but shook her head. Right, she was a stand, I thought.
George,
she said.
I think this is the safest place. I think. If it was the old cube house, it definitely would be. To the cube house, the outside world is beyond the world's end and not something that ever affects it.
I knew what she was saying now. Yes, normally the 7 cubes of a tesseract formed the inside of an 8th cube that wrapped around them. Cube House was a tesseract made of square walls, so inside it was a single universe, an entire world squeezed inside. So the Cube House itself was not part of our universe. Nothing would affect it, which meant you could attack the crap out of it and it would never reach the inside. The walls of the Cube House were the ends of that world, which all made me wonder why Rohan and Fukashiki had avoided exploding by being placed under Arrowcross. I had assumed it formed a vacuum, but this was clearly not the whole story. If it had been, they would not have survived there for long. They had lived because they were not just under Arrowcross House, but under Cube House, because the world's very end lay on top of them, a zone where everything was reset to zero, the absolute buffer. Pushing aside my excitement, I said,
Well then let's escape! Into Cube House!
But it's turned into Arrowcross. I don't know if its old power remains.
Ha! Sugimoto didn't know her own power. If a stand was power manifested, perhaps it was the same as people not knowing their own strength.
No! Cube House itself exists simultaneously,
I said. She looked surprised, and I led her and Rohan into the study. First, I checked the rug. It was still in place. I inspected the top of the desk as well. Nothing out of place. No one had gone in or out. Then I moved the desk away from the door.
Ah! Hey! Don't touch that! To a manga artist, a desk is like a chef's kitchen or a teacher's podium. It's not something anyone else should just feel free to move around as they like.
I ignored him. When I moved the rug aside and revealed the door, he shut up. Sugimoto looked just as surprised. So I went below this door earlier, and there was someone there. I don't suppose you know who? I asked.
Huh? No.
Okay, then... I debated whether I should say anything, but decided I should. Worst case scenario, Tsukumochiku's murderer is hiding out inside here. Our working theory is that Rohan didn't notice the killer arranging the display of Tsukumochiku's body and escaping because he was asleep, I said. Rohan shook his head.
That's your theory, not mine,
he insisted. I cut him off. But it's possible Rohan didn't notice his escape because he hasn't escaped yet. Because he's below this door.
I see, Rohan said. So he made that locked room without my senses detecting a thing, because he made this a temporary waypoint. He carried everything he needed, including Tsukumochiku, down here ahead of time, and then began work once I left the study.
Despite the events outside, Rohan sounded so calm, it effortlessly dissipated all the tension I was trying to create. I certainly considered that, but I don't believe he would have had that much time to kill Tsukumochiku. After all, I met Tsukumochiku last night at 11:30 p.m. in Fukui, in the town of Nishiakatsuki. No matter how fast he worked, I don't think he could have killed Tsukumochiku before dawn, or gone through all the steps he would have needed to plan this. But this isn't really the time to discuss it in detail. Rohan, do you have anything that would work as a weapon?
Maybe a golf club.
Can I borrow that? And a rope?
I have some mountain climbing gear.
That sounds great. I'll borrow that too.
Just so you know, both were forced on me by my editors. They keep saying I should exercise more. I haven't touched them since.
I really don't care. Sorry, kinda in a hurry here. I stood back up and looked around for the hidden camera Morioh had set up. Ah, there. It was hidden behind a plant in the corner of the room. As I was checking the camera, Rohan came back with a golf bag and a bundle of rope.
Ah, that's my camera!
He yelped. I had Morioh set it to record in case anyone went in or out of this door, I said. I turned the desk so it straddled the door, tied the rope to the desk, and opened the door, letting it fall into the room. Rohan peered into the space below and muttered,
"Whew, this was under my feet the whole time."
I dropped the rest of the rope through the door.
"George,"
Sugimoto said.
"Going in there is dangerous."
Huh?
Cube House is meant for a single occupant. If 2 or more people run around inside, it could be very bad.
How bad?
It could lead to contradictions. With floors and ceilings, the rooms inside turn to accommodate the people inside.
Oh, I see. As long as you move horizontally from the study, nothing can go wrong. But...
Right. If you go below the floor or above the ceiling, the floor of the room next door is the wall of the room next to the study.
Huh. So, how does the Cube House handle these contradictions?
One of you will be pulled into a parallel universe. He'll be lost in that world and never get anywhere.
Jeez, that was hella scary.
Has that ever happened before? Nope. When Cube House was Cube House, I was all alone in here. But I know. That's how it works with powers. You know things without having to test them, but there's still lots of things you don't know. You know?
I wondered if the intruder I encountered had grokked to the danger of parallel worlds and run from me. I wasn't sure.
But then, if we go down now, isn't it still dangerous?
Rohan asked, anxiously. Sugimoto smiled.
Don't worry, Rohan. I'm the owner of the cube house. I'm the basis of its behavior. I decide where the floors and ceilings and walls go.
Good. But we had to hurry. Then let's get in, I said. I took a firm grip on the rope.
Wait!
Sugimoto said.
Make sure you don't fall straight down.
Huh? Ah.
The door down there would catch your fall, but if you broke through the door and did that 3 times, well, it would be very bad.
I looked up. The third door she mentioned was the door in the ceiling. The room below, the room below, the room below this one was the study, so if I broke through all 3, I'd fall forever. What would happen then? If gravity increased my fall speed here, I'd fall until I hit terminal velocity. Everything's so extreme and permanent, I muttered.
It's the cube house,
Sugimoto said.
Can't be helped.
True. This was a world of its own. All 3 of us made it safely down the rope to the room below. It was immediately obvious Sugimoto felt more at home down here in Cube House. She smiled more.
Let's go find this rude interloper,
she said. Should we really leave the door up there open? Rohan muttered, looking up at it. If that giant insect monster steps on it, what'll happen? I guess we're on a pretty big hill. It probably won't try climbing up here.
Don't worry, Rohan,
she said.
There's no way it could do anything to Cube House.
I remembered Rohan saying that the Cube House was supposedly moved here from a town in Fukui called Nishiakatsuki. He'd said it was only a rumor, but still it meant that someone or something had moved it. If nobody could do anything to it, as Sugimoto seemed convinced, how could anyone have moved it? When I raised this question to Sugimoto, she shrugged.
I don't know.
I sighed and raised the golf club, ready for anything.
Hey, don't act like I'm supposed to know that. That's the very core of my being. Well, most humans couldn't tell you anything like that. Ask someone how they became what they are. Go on.
She had a point, I admitted, as I lowered myself into the room below. Sugimoto and Rohan stayed in the room below the study, and I went down the room below that, opened the door in the floor, and made sure the room below that was empty. I was in the middle room. That's to say, the room below the study, which was also the room above the study. 3 center doors were open, and if I fell through here and broke through the ceiling of the study, Sugimoto had said I'd fall forever, without ever escaping Cube House.
Anyone there?
No.
Well, then come back up.
Easier said than done, but with a little effort, I managed to scramble back up to the room where Rohan and Sugimoto were waiting, in the room beneath the study. Well then, we just have to check the 4 rooms around this one. Let's do that quick. I glanced over and Sugimoto was watching the display on the video camera I'd brought with us. See anything?
Nah.
I can't hear the giant's footsteps anymore, Rohan said. Sugimoto laughed without taking her eyes off the display.
Not in this house, no. Even the study is a room in Cube House now. No longer part of Arrow Cross.
I sure bought one hell of a house. I opened the door to the east. Nobody inside. Okay, then I'm going around to the right. Rohan nodded and tightened his grip on his golf club. Okay, but George, when you open it, don't do it slowly. Just slam the thing open like the cops do in movies. The way you're opening doors is more like a horror movie. It's making me nervous. Alright, sure thing. I went in a circle around Sugimoto and the camera. Opening doors, slam! Nobody in the north room. Slam! Nobody in the west room. Last one. At this speed, no way he could get out in time. Right. I'd saved the south door for last, for good reason. This was the door I'd sensed the intruder's presence behind, and if he was still down here, he'd be behind this door. My palms were sweating, but I couldn't put it off any longer. I put my hand on the doorknob and glanced at Rohan. He nodded. But before I could open the door, Sugimoto shrieked and staggered backwards 3 steps, staring at the camera in her hand. What is it? Rohan said, moving over to her, but I still had to check behind this door. Slam! Empty. Good.
What does this mean, Rohan?
Sugimoto said, her voice trembling. I ran over, looked at the screen, and my jaw dropped as far as Rohan's had. On the screen was Tsukumojiku. He'd climbed up the rope to the study, closed the door, put the rug back, straightened the desk he'd knocked over, put everything on the desk exactly back where it had been so that nobody could possibly tell that anyone had come through the door. And then Tsukumojiku, who was very clearly alive, looked right at the camera and walked towards it. We could hear his footsteps on the carpet and a thundering crash from outside. It was the sound of Nero Nero Island crashing through the Morioh barrier. On screen, Tsukumojiku looked up alarmed. Well, that proved this video had been made a few minutes ago. Tsukumojiku looked back at the camera, staring right into the lens, and grinned.
I guess my life belongs entirely to George Joestar. To both Georges. Don't worry about it. In the words of Jason Sobracuarto, life is an explosion. My life is exploding as we speak. Well, see you again.
And with that, he vanished. We stared at it dumbly for a minute, unable to think, but I couldn't afford to not think all day, so I went outside instead.
Take care,
Rohan said, his mind clearly elsewhere. Confused, Tsugimoto looked up at me as I was clambering through the door.
Do humans come back to life sometimes?
She asked. I laughed, buoyed by the sudden possibility that Tsukumojiku might be alive. I really wanted to talk to that strange boy one more time. I think some people just don't die that easily. Why was it that I couldn't just trust that he'd come back to life? I pulled myself up into the study, left Cube House, closed the door behind me, left Arrow Cross House through the west sunroom, and ran down the hill. Nero Nero Island had clambered out of the harbour and was headed into the centre of Morioh. The sheer weight of it definitely made it move slower on land. It took ages for it to simply lift one of those giant insect feet. And each step sank deep into the ground, so to pull one foot out the other 5 had to dig in, which made them sink deeper and threw the entire island's balance off. Somehow it managed not to fall over, and precariously move its foot forward, smashing buildings as that foot sank into the ground again. As rickety as this island's movement was, I still couldn't even begin to catch up with it. My legs were too short. I mean, they were normal lengths, and I was probably on the good side of athletic, but after experiencing the joy of riding Johanna around, my 2 legs felt like slugs. Blue Thunder couldn't be reloaned, apparently. It had vanished the second Rohan took it off, and there were obviously no taxis running. My feelings were getting ahead of me, and I could almost cry, but as I got further down the hill and reached a larger road and saw the stream of emergency vehicles headed for the destruction, the drivers' grips on their wheels, and people hanging off the fire trucks by their fingernails, to a man looking like the worlds were ending, I stopped caring about my speed at all. How many people could be kept safe under Arrow Cross? Things were so bad now, it might have been better if the people in the harbour had gone crazy too. I dashed down a dirt road through a field, looking up at the sky. It was almost 5, and the sun hung low in the west. With the barrier broken, the wind was blowing again. The humid, sticky sea breeze was making me sweat, but it was still an improvement. My feet felt lighter. A lot of baggage was slipping away. The sound of Nero Nero Island's footsteps was getting closer. I turned my gaze forward and sped up. I was almost at the battlefield. I ran through Morioh suburbs. Nero Nero Island's feet had crushed an awful lot of houses, but they had been evacuated in time, and I didn't see any signs of loss of life. I passed the rear legs, and as I drew closer to the middle legs, I glanced at the deserted station and crossed the tracks. I could make out people scurrying around the front legs. Budogaoka Academy appeared to be the center of activity, probably because lots of people had already been summoned there. I slowed down, considering my approach, when the surface of the road next to me went psh, and I jumped. A gunshot. I dove off the road into a garden and hid behind a wall. I looked around but didn't see anyone. Then 3 more bullets went psh, psh, psh. Moving from the road to the wall, I could feel the impacts on this side. At last I realized these weren't coming from my level, but rather above me. I looked up and saw the coast of Nero Nero Island above me. Someone was shooting at me. Nero Nero Island's belly was a good 200 meters thick, so it was around 300 meters from here to the island's surface. I couldn't make out the face of the guy shooting at me, but I thought I could hear him laughing. The bullets kept coming, all hitting the other side of the wall, but if I stayed here, he was bound to get lucky eventually. 3, 2, 1... I summoned my nerve and broke away from the wall. I threw myself onto the porch of the house. The hail of bullets followed after me, slamming into the roof, but once I was out of sight, he gave up. I laid low until I was sure the gunfire had stopped. I let myself breathe again, then figured I should at least check on the owners of the house, since they'd saved my life. I peered in through the windows, but all was quiet, no signs of anyone there. I knocked on the window and called out, but there was no answer, except for a high-pitched whine coming my way, followed by a massive explosion. A house a few plots away had exploded into a pillar of fire. A rocket launcher? Was I in a fucking war zone? Wait, someone had been aiming the gun at me. So someone might be aiming that rocket launcher at someone else. I jumped up and ran off the porch. Someone above saw me go and hastily started shooting. Behind me and to either side I heard pounding into the pavement, but at this distance firing blind would never hit me as long as I kept moving. The rocket launcher probably couldn't get me either. I hoped whomever they were aiming that at was safe. There was a ton of smoke and plenty of fire left. As I drew near the impact site, I called out, "Hey! You alive?"
George!
Someone answered.
Over here!
Hirose Koji was hiding in the garage on the other side of the rubble.
Oh, good. You're not hurt?
Nope. You?
I'm fine.
I ran into the garage too.
They might fire a second missile down, so we should keep moving,
Hirose said.
They've got a shitload of weapons.
Right.
Here, just think, and it'll fly you there,
Hirose said, and put a blue thunder on my head too. We flew right out of the garage. This was even better than the dolphins. I could really steer it at will, with no hands. Every thought I had turned to action, as if I was really flying on my own. But since the propeller was on my head, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was straining my neck, even though it didn't hurt. I followed after Hirose as we flew serpentine through the neighborhood, flying just above the ground so as to better hide ourselves from the shooters on Nero Nero Island. We dodged propane tanks and bicycles until we flew into a factory and found the Nichimura brothers.
"Oh, you're alive, George,"
Fukashiki said.
"What about Rohan and Raimi?"
Morioh Taisa asked. I let them know the two of them were safe inside Cube House, inside Arrow Cross. I didn't mention Tsukumojiku just yet. "What's going on here?" I asked, and none of them said anything immediately. Sensing the Nichimura brothers didn't want to admit they were in trouble, Hirose finally broke the silence.
Shock and awe. We're occupied. They're in control. While everyone was still in a panic because the island was stomping Morioh flat, several standmasters with weapons came floating down and kidnapped all the exhausted, half-dead folks in the gym. One of them has a stand like a tornado, and it vacuumed them all up.
"That was Dolce Chocolata," NYPD Blue said. "I got the evidence." "Fuck, man! Is evidence all you've got? Don't just record shit, do something about it!"
Fukashiki yelled. His voice was hoarse, and the yell was more anguished than angry.
"Look,"
NYPD Blue said.
"You order me to go into the Mafia HQ alone. I ain't the type to back down. Like I said, up to you." "You're just a punk kid. You talk big, but talk is cheap. You gotta grow up. Match your build. Pathetic." "Damn it! Then what the fuck should I do?" I told you that too! Sit tight and wait! Diving empty-handed into a war you can't win ain't what a man does. That's what a fool who can't stand embarrassment does. For a man to sacrifice himself, he needs a better reason than shame. You gotta grin and bear it. Keep your mind flexible and wait for your moment.
Fukashiki grit his teeth and went silent.
Once they had hostages, all resistance ceased,
Hirose said, resuming his explanation.
They called for Mayor Shishimaru and made him their puppet. All orders from the mafia have been relayed through him. Right now they're dragging standmasters into the open, promising not to harm anyone who comes forward of their own accord. But if they have to find us, then we'll be punished. In a very mafia-esque move, they're encouraging people to turn in anyone they know. They've got a number of people in the last hour alone. Our names may well come to light soon.
So, I asked, is that it? Nothing else has happened yet?
Huh? Yeah.
Well, if they've got hostages and the mayor working for them, and are hunting standmasters, they're still trying to get control. They're pretty far from getting us under their thumb completely. It just feels like they have, but really they're still trying to get us in line, and they haven't let us know their real goal yet.
Their real goal?
You really think they want to occupy Morioh? They're the mafia. There's no enemy mafia group here. They've got no vested interest in this town at all. I won't go so far as to say there's nothing here the mafia might be interested in. There's money and women, but everything that goes on in this town right now is being watched very closely. It's 2012. There are satellites chasing us around, manned and unmanned probes in the sky monitoring the town in real time. Any yen the mafia steal right now can't be spent. They can't launder it or hide it. They can't traffic any women. They know that. And they know it's only a matter of time before someone with real power hits these two islands and occupies us for real. The barrier's already down. They did that themselves. It won't be much longer. Whatever it is they're really trying to do will come out soon. Something they can accomplish with all this going on. Something tiny that the satellite and aircraft won't ever notice. But something very important to them.
Very important how? What can Morioh people do for the mafia?
Hirose asked. Our current theory is that Kira Yoshikage is moving this island, probably to escape from all the detectives descending on the town. It's a good theory, it's probably the truth. So, something like that might be happening on their end. Would these psychos run from a detective? Probably not. It's a mafia island. And we saw them killing each other on Nero Nero Island from Arrowcross Hill. Whatever these psychos are up to has something to do with trouble in the mob. Like NYPD Blue said, if the mafia are killing bystanders,
either they're trying to kill the boss and cutting off his escape, or they already did it and they're cleaning up.
NYPD Blue said, repeating his own line.
I did say that. Mafia headquarters are where the boss feels most safe. A place where even the non-criminals will protect him. For many, it's where they were born. They've dropped as much dough as they can in there, greased the wheels, and can expect a good return, but right now it's in chaos. Either they've killed the boss and are purging the last of anyone who'd come back on them, or they're trying to kill the boss and making sure he can't get any help from the locals, driving him into a corner. Either way, the boss dies, lots of people go with him.
I was the first to break the silence. I don't know if NYPD Blue's theory is right or not, but it's clear the Mafia are attacking for a reason. Which begs the question, why do the Mafia think whatever they're after will be here? Because they've done their homework on the place. Why would the Italian Mafia have even heard of Morioh? Because Morioh started swimming out to sea. That was all over the news, and something this weird's gonna be broadcast in every country in the world. The Mafia would have seen it. They'd know a killer named Kira Yoshikage lived here, and know that several detectives were murdered here. When they saw Baria Chomaru's press conference, I had speculated that there were other detectives here besides me. I had based that speculation on solid grounds, but would the Mafia even need that? As I considered this, I heard the same truck that had delivered the call to the town meeting, broadcasting a new message through its loudspeaker.
Would the detectives, Dai Baksho Curry, Run Baba 12, and George Joestar please hurry to the Budogaoka Academy garden? We repeat, would the detectives, Dai Baksho Curry...
Huh? I thought. On several layers at once. First, they were summoning me by name. Second, Daibakusho Curry and Run Baba 12 were both from Nishiakatsuki too. All three of us were Nishiakatsuki detectives. Why would all the detectives in Morioh be from the same place, even though no other detectives had been able to get here? And, thirdly, the timing of this summons was too perfect. Well, timing always worked like that. Good or bad, things were always perfectly timed.
Yikes,
Fukashiki said.
What'll you do? Don't go. Wait for your moment.
That was NYPD Blue's advice from a moment ago, so I laughed and called him a dipshit.
Shut the fuck up, moron!
NYPD Blue roared, so suddenly both Fukashiki and I snapped our mouths shut. See? Timing. I tried a different approach. Detectives don't back down at a time like this, I said. For them to know my name. I'd only told it to the 3 boys here and the 2 in the cube house. That means someone had done some digging and found my name, Kira Yoshikage. Had he sold me to the mob? Was he waiting for his chance to strike? Interesting. I asked the Nishimuras and Hirose to provide whatever backup they could, went alone to Budogaoka Academy's garden, and found the town residents gathered there, and a young Italian man in a well-tailored suit sitting on a chair in the center, with Shishimaru Denta standing next to him. When Ranbaba 12 and Daibakusho Curry saw me, they smiled ruefully. They were both good-looking men, but had clearly been through some shit. Their shirts and pants were both soaking wet and ragged. Mine weren't much better. Hey there!
Sup? You still alive? Didn't think we'd have a reunion here.
Seriously?
What a pain. Let my curiosity get the better of me.
Yeah, but if you were watching this on TV, you'd be kicking yourself.
True. For sure.
Fed up with us whispering to each other, thud! The mafia dude kicked the table between us. I didn't jump, but man.
Oh, shit.
Shit.
3 of us here. He only needs 1.
Whoa.
Well, we don't need you.
No, you.
Dipshit. Thud! This time he had his hand in his suit jacket. Maybe it was time to knock it off. His hair was cropped at the jawline, with a small fringe over his forehead in a Japanese style called okappa, but he didn't seem to speak Japanese. We, or at least I, spoke Italian, but it was a pain, so I asked Shishimaru Denta. So, what's he want with us?
I believe this, phone. Any minute now, someone will call this phone. I think.
His head was swollen in weird places, so he must have put his own self on the line to protect the residents. So I forgave him. But there was no phone on the table he was pointing to. There was a filthy rubber ball, and a right shoe, and a pebble. But the pebble suddenly started ringing. It also vibrated. Huh. A stand, I said, and the other 2 looked surprised.
Hey? What, George? You know what this thing is? What is it?
How is it ringing?
If they didn't know about stands, they were in for a rough ride. But they'd pick it up fast enough, like I had. I picked up the pebble. It had a display, and accept call button, so I pressed it, and answered. Hello? To my surprise, the voice on the other end spoke Japanese.
Hello. Is that George Joestar?
A young man's voice. Yup. You?
My name doesn't matter. You are English? Born in Japan?
I am. And you are Japanese, born in Italy. What's your business?
I'm starting to like you.
You are? Then come on down here. Let's talk face to face.
Let's get down to business.
You want to hire me?
What do you mean?
Hire me as a detective.
I suppose.
Then tell me the name of my client. As a detective, You let people use you, you end up in a sticky situation. Get used to that fact and you start turning down any jobs where the client's identity isn't clear. If you don't tell me, I'm hanging up. I waited a moment, then took the pebble away from my ear and was about to hang up when I heard him laughing. A gentle, light laugh.
Very well. My name is Shobana Haruno, Nikkei Italian. I usually go by Giorno Giovanna. Satisfied?
Yes. Thank you. Please proceed.
I'd like you to look for someone. I don't know his real name. All I know is what he's called. Diavolo, the boss of the Passione family.
Well, that was pretty much what I'd expected. Is this person a stand master? I asked.
We believe so.
But neither I nor the other two detectives can use a stand. Honestly, we know very little about them.
I will provide you with assistance.
Of our choosing? Didn't think so.
The man with you is Bruno Bucciolati. His team will be working with you. He'll lead, I'll be in charge of communications, and the other three will each accompany one of you detectives.
I see. Is there a time limit?
No.
But our current situation can't last forever.
No matter what the situation is, no matter what happens, you must find Diavolo. Understand? No matter what.
And if we can't?
There is no need to consider that.
I see. I was better off not thinking about it. Yeah.
So, George Joestar, I look forward to your success.
He hung up. Bruno Bucciolati stood up and spoke to me in Italian.
You speak Italian, don't you?
Shit, I thought, which was clearly a mistake. He laughed.
I can't smell lies, remember that. Even if you don't tell me the whole truth, the taste and the scent are weaker, but it's still a lie.
3 dangerous-looking Italians came up behind him. They were all rather young. So, I said, I do speak Italian, but, Bucciolati looked at the others too.
You both speak Italian as well, detectives?
Both Daibakusho Curry and Ranbaba 12 nodded. Si, they said. High-level communication was a necessity in our line of work. Bucciolati assigned each of us one of his men. Daibakusho Curry got Leone Abacchio. Tall, with stern features, he loomed over that not especially tall Daibakusho Curry. Ranbaba got Guido Mister. Well-built, with a strange hat. Apparently he smelled rather bad, since Ranbaba 12 sniffed once, made a face, and then kept his distance. I was assigned Narancia Girga. He was about the same age as me, with a boyish face, but the way he fixed me with a menacing glare suggested he was well aware of how young he looked. "Don't fuck with me!" he hissed, and he made sure I knew he had a knife on him too. Clearly he was the most dangerous of this group. So, time to go investigate. I kept the pebble, Daibakusho Curry took the rubber ball, and Ranbaba 12 the orphaned shoe. Ranbaba 12 tried to convince us to trade with him, but Bucciolati roared, "Enough!" I looked at Narancia, and saw someone standing next to him. It was Tsukumojiku. He grinned at me. "Hey, I am your instrument. A person needs your help. I'll take you to them." He grabbed my shoulder. "Yo, what the fuck?" Narancia yelled, pushing me aside and pointing his knife at Tsukumojiku. In that instant, we jumped. "Ha! Whoops! Brought an anomaly along, but it all means something, I'm sure." "Bye!" Tsukumojiku vanished, leaving me and Narancia. The H.G. Wells, an American spacecraft launched by NASA, was currently passing by the dark side of Mars on its journey to the Red Planet, about to make a new discovery. Namely that, in addition to Phobos and Deimos, Mars had a third moon that was previously undetected, because Mars had always been between it and the Earth. Tsukumojiku had just dropped me and Narancia off on that very same H.G. Wells, deep in its journey to Mars.